Hi everyone, my name is Melissa van Dijk, and in today's video I want to talk about something that comes up quite often, and that is the question, what does skincare actually do to your face? Because on the surface the answer seems obvious. It hydrates, smooths the skin, so mainly a temporary cosmetic effect. But at the same time the question isn't that easy to answer, because it really depends on what you're using and also how the skin responds to it over time. And that's where it becomes a bit of a paradox. Because skincare can make the skin look better, but that doesn't necessarily mean the underlying state has actually improved. You can have phases where the skin looks smoother, maybe more hydrated. But once the product is removed, things go back to how they were before, or sometimes even feel slightly worse. And that raises a question. Because if something truly improves the condition of the skin, there should be at least some level of stability, not just as a result that depends entirely on continuous use. So what becomes noticeable over time is that most skincare works primarily on the surface. It can create a smoother feel, reduce the appearance of dryness, or make the skin look more even. But in many cases, it's more like it's simulating a balanced state rather than actually creating it. And just to briefly mention this, because it usually comes up, something like sunscreen falls into a slightly different category. Because its main purpose is protection, not necessarily improving the skin's internal balance. So even there, it's still working more on the surface, just with a different function. And that doesn't mean skincare is bad, because it can support the skin, especially when something is temporarily off. But if the underlying balance isn't there, then the effect often stays dependent on the product itself. And that's also where things can shift in the opposite direction. Because when the surface is constantly being altered, the skin starts adjusting to that. It may become more reactive or feel like it needs a product to stay stable. So in a way, you are maintaining a condition rather than resolving it. And that's where the perspective changes. Because the skin is constantly regulating itself based on everything it receives, not just from the outside, but also from the inside and the environment. Things like diet and stress and even the climate you're in all influence how the skin behaves. And if those things are out of balance, skincare alone usually doesn't fully compensate for that. So instead of looking for a single product to fix it, it becomes more about understanding what the skin is responding to overall. And using skincare as support, not as the main solution. And that's really how to look at it. Not that skincare doesn't do anything, but that it often works on a different level than expected. And that's what I want to share with you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!